Welcome to episode 5 of the Super Lap Battle build. We'll talk about what we've done in the front of the car so far. So the easy thing to see, but we've mocked up the front clam. This clam's had a little bit of a difficult life in the past, but it's going to be okay. We're actually going to cut almost all of that damaged area off on the bottom. And then we've kind of semi-permanently installed the fender flares so that we can go to the next step, which is getting the car measured for wider wheels. Before we do that though, we are going to have to kind of trim the inside lip of the fender flare to get a couple more millimeters right there, and then remove the OEM fender that's still actually underneath there. And then we might or might not need to clearance something in this area. It's not really a big deal though. We'll just pull that off and cut it after we get the tires and wheels sized up. The goal is to run something like a 265 A052 on a 17, if I'm remembering right. So it'd be like a 17 by 9 or 17 by 10-ish custom wheel. We're gonna bring it over to 812 wheels, get them to scan it, and hopefully we have a whole video about that process when we do that. We'll be right back in a second with the clam off to show you what else we did. We've got the entire suspension mounted, T45 ERW control arms, I believe, as opposed to welded. We've got a billet aluminum upright. We've got billet steering arms that give us more camber and stronger part there versus stock. We've got larger brakes, but that still mount right up to the like OEM duplicate billet upright. Those uprights have drop spindles in them, so they make the ride height about 20 millimeters lower just on their own. And I guess you won't be able to see it, but underneath the brake rotor, we do have nice floating brake rotors on this car, which are just sitting slightly crooked right now. Have a look at that actually in a second. I think it's just sitting on the lip of the stud, but we'll definitely double check that. The bearings in here are modified to plug into a Bosch ABS system. They are S3 Elise wheel bearings, so they're physically the same. They just have different electrical components in them, so they natively work with the type of wheel speed sensor that the Bosch is looking for. And I guess the only other thing to show you is that we started just mounting a couple of components on the car so we can get through that. So we've got the power pass through to the cabin. That's the ABS's relay power. And here's the front PDM that will run. I think this runs everything forward of the rear firewall. So it runs the fans in the front, if we have any, the pumps in the front. We'll have a 40 amp water pump and a 25 amp intercooler pump running off of that. We'll have signals to power for the TPMS systems, power for the chiller in the cabin, power for the dash and the keyboards in the cabin, and the ECU on the rear firewall. And so everything from the firewall forward is on this PDM, and then everything in the engine bay, so the coils, the injectors, the fans, the scavenge pumps, if there's any, the oil pump for the transmission, that's all gonna run off of the rear PDM, the tail lights, etc. And that'll let us have, it really made wiring the car a lot easier, not having to have a big trunk of wires come either from the back to the front or front to the back. Now you've only got 13 wires, I think, running down the center of the car, and everything else is kind of isolated, so that worked out really well. So that's it on the front of the car so far. Hopefully we can start working on this car a little bit heavier. Oh, actually, there's 2 more things in the front of the car we didn't talk about. So one is that we're gonna take all of this fiberglass off here in the front and basically make our own cooling center. We'll put the biggest radiator we can in, something around this size. Then we'll have the side of the radiator box be the intercoolers. And so the air will come in through the front, up and out the radiator, but then also out the side of the intercoolers, and then we'll duct that same air up out of the wheel wells, so it's not contributing to wheel well pressure at all. Top of the wheel wells in this car will definitely have quite a bit of ducting, leaving them to get all that pressure out. And by taking all this fiberglass out, we'll be able to, 1, put bigger coolers, and 2, run a way more aggressive splitter. So we'll be able to run tunnels, that start from here and come to, well, I should be on the side with the camera. A tunnel that runs from like there to there will be possible now. Whereas in the past, you've been limited to a relatively small tunnel about here. In a flat bottom car with a big splitter, the tunnels just give a ton of downforce and it really makes the car way easier to drive. And we have these cage tie-in points up here that we'll be able to bolt into to support all of that front structure. So it'll still be, you know, tied to the stiff part of the car, but it won't be in violation of the Super Lap Battle front shock tower rules. So we're excited to see how that pans out.